What is up, everybody? Happy Halloween. We here on Shoot the Gap wish you a safe and happy Halloween. Hope all you parents of trick-or-treaters, and let's face it, some of you who are too old to be trick-or-treating are still probably trick-or-treating. Hopefully you're safe as well. Hopefully those, 8-year-olds on a sugar high don't beat you up as you're stealing all their candy. I'm Jorge. This is JT. Welcome to Shoot the Gap. And we are not prepared with outfits. We were talking about this beforehand. I threw away my Darth Vader mask years ago, which I'm totally regretting right now. JT, he forgot his mask, so we're kind of.
I was trying to decide if I put it on, if it was going to be super mumbled. So I was like, should I do it for the opening and then take it off? But I was like, it's probably too much work. We'll just go normal face today, and we'll save the Halloween costumes for after the show.
I'm waiting for somebody in the chat to say, Jorge, I thought you had your mask on already. But nobody has done that yet. But let's, speaking of let's get this going. So sorry, folks, we understand we're late. We normally go on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern. Life gets in the way, blah, blah, blah. But we wanted to make sure we got here to get you some IDP information. We have Thursday Night Football coming up really soon, so we'll try to expedite this episode. As JT, is it safe to say our normal episodes, since we go on last on Fantasy and Frames Wednesdays, tend to exceed an hour just a little bit?
Yeah, usually we're trying to keep it to an hour, but there's times we get going, and if we get a lot of comments and questions, then sometimes we push it to an hour and a half the last couple episodes. But we've had a lot of good interaction, a lot of people asking trade questions and whatnot. So it's pushed it a little bit long, just because we've had a lot more engagement of people asking us other stuff other than what's typically in the show already.
Yep, absolutely, and. So we totally get it if a lot of you are listening to this in podcast form tomorrow, as opposed to getting ready for Thursday Night Football. Trust us, we are not insulted by that. But for those who are watching and those who are tuning in and want some IDP Fantasy Football advice, thank you. JT, with it being Halloween, can you, I know it's been a long time for both of us, but what was your favorite Halloween outfit as a kid / older kid?
This one's a little toughy for me, just because my family was not a big Halloween family. Like, my mom didn't really like dress. She didn't like to do stuff like that. So we just never really got way into it. So I never did do a bunch of crazy outfits. I was such a sports kid growing up that I think one of my favorite ones was I decided I was going to go as the multi-sport athlete. I wore a Bears helmet, a Michael Jordan jersey, and then I wore my baseball pants, so that I was a baseball player, a football player, and a basketball player all at the same time. So that shows you the creativity of me when I was young. We just didn't do a lot of that stuff. I will tell you, as I grew up, I was a big metal fan, and I loved Slipknot in college. Slipknot was one of my favorite bands. I've seen them in concert a bunch of times. I have a orange Slipknot jumpsuit, official Slipknot orange jumpsuit. And I used to have number 4, the guitarist face mask. I used to wear it with a wig. 90% of Halloweens, I'd wear it every year, and I would freak everybody out. These kids would come to the door, and I'd have this huge, orange jumpsuit on with the mask. Unbelievably, the mask deteriorated and finally fell apart last year, so I can't wear that one anymore. I'm gonna need to find a replacement. It lasted 15 years, so I mean, it was a really well-made mask before it finally started to crumble and go to party. But that's probably the one I always remember, because all my friends know me as going as one of the Slipknot guys on Halloween, because that's kind of my outfit I was going on. And I had a couple years, I had some parents yell at me when we went trick-or-treating when my son was little, because they thought I was scaring all the other little kids.
Well, you're supposed to. It's it's Halloween. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is how awesome and corny I am. I was having a conversation earlier with one of my friends about dating life and what are things people look for in dating nowadays. And I was like, so what do you look for in dating? And she's rattling off, some things. And I'm thinking to myself, I would never fit in single life right now. Let me give you an example why. My favorite Halloween costume was dressing up like Captain Picard from Star Trek The Next Generation. Problem is, I wasn't bald, so I kind of just like took a bunch of baby powder and just put it all in my hair just to kind of like look like I was like old and gray. And here's the kicker. I've worn that outfit not just when it's Halloween. So when thinking that out loud, maybe not taking place at a Star Trek convention too. And I'm just rattling off all these embarrassing things in my head, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I would be single for the rest of my life. That's just how it is. I have no idea how I'm not right now, but yeah. So that was my favorite Halloween outfit.
That's
Hopefully
awesome. I was gonna say the only time I've kind of ventured away from that is when I've had girlfriends who were big into Halloween and they wanted to wear like a couple's outfit.
right.
You know, so a couple of years I went as Wayne's World. We went as Wayne and Garth. So me and my girlfriend went as Wayne and Garth. Another year we went a Kurt Cobain. I went as Kurt Cobain and she went as Courtney Love. And I was dressed up like him in the MTV Unplugged album and cover. So I've done a couple of those ones, you know. So it just kind of depends. I was big into Sons of Anarchy.
Oh yeah.
My girlfriend and one of my bartenders and her boyfriend all went as all the crew from Sons of Anarchy a couple years back. That's when I had the big beard. So I was able to really kind of go get the biker stuff, and I was kind of able to get, do all that and go as that crew. So it just kind of depends. One of my all-time favorite was we went as Boogie Nights at my bar, JT Walker's Brewery. All the people that worked together all went as Boogie Nights, and it was dude. If I had a picture for you right now, you would die laughing. I went as the captain. Oh man, I tell you what, I kind of was pulling off the Burt Reynolds look from Boogie Nights, pretty legit.
That is
awesome. I had the scarf, I had the coat. Oh man, and I was getting the gray coming in and stuff. I was like, man, I kind of pulled it off pretty well. And I've got this is to go along with that. It was partly why we did it. I have a 1977 orange Corvette that's exact same as what he has in the movie.
Oh, wow.
Drove the car to the bar. We were taking pictures next to the car outside on the Halloween party. So that was a good one. That one I just popped in my head. I do remember that one was pretty hilarious.
I do remember, sorry if any hair stylists are out there listening to this right now, because this is probably going to be like the advice you would never give, and it just makes you cringe. It was a Friday night, and there was a Halloween party at my coworker's house the Saturday, and I wanted to go as Johnny from Karate Kid. Little problem, I'm not blonde. So I ended up like bleaching my hair hardcore just to go for this party. And then on Sunday, I dyed my hair back to its natural brown. And I told somebody about that, one of my friends about that, who's a stylist, and they're like, you just committed like cardinal sins when it comes to hair care and hair products, and what the F were you thinking type of deal.
Yeah, that's where you got to get the wig. That's what's helped me, man. I've got a couple of the wigs over the years. I've got like the blonde wig. I've got a long dark hair brown wig. Yeah, it makes things a little bit easier to do the wigs. But it was funny because I remember we went as Wayne and Garth. Like I didn't shave my beard, and I've had like my beard like this forever. I mean, forever. I think I've shaved it like a couple times in the last like 15 years or so. And I didn't have it, so I had the beard as Wayne. From Wayne and Garth, and everybody's like, "You look like him, but something's off." And it's like because I did shave the beard. That one I probably should have went all out in and did the beard, but whatever.
Did you throw out the ad reads that he would do in the movie when everybody's going around the table and it's like, "I'll have a Sprite, I'll have this," and you're like, I want the choice of a new generation, and it's like a Pepsi can right there.
Well, the funny thing was I had the hat, so I had the Wayne's World hat, and I had the long hair. I wore the black t-shirt. I actually took a Guitar Hero guitar, and I wore a Guitar Hero guitar all night and would play it. And then my girlfriend had a blonde wig. I have to say, it was a little scary. My girlfriend looked exactly like Garth. Like she was a pretty girl, but man, she looked exactly like Garth. She had the drumsticks all night long. It was pretty hilarious.
It's 15 years later and 17 years later, and I didn't realize till you just said it a few minutes ago. I could have wore a wig this entire time. Literally, it just hit me. That's how. Like, duh, Jorge.
See, that's how you just like, oh, I'll just do my hair different like that. And I've had people like, oh, you should just get, because again, I was like, how do I do my hair like this? So like, just go get a wig. I'm like, oh, good idea. Good idea. So yeah, that's what I've done for most of them.
Yeah, that would have made a lot more sense. Anyhow,
Halloween talk. We that was supposed to be a 2-minute segment. We've gone for 10 on the Halloween talk. Sorry about that, folks. This is how we get to an hour and a half show that's supposed to be an hour.
Yeah, we get off the rails real quick, but in a good way. So you guys have fun, guys and gals have fun. For those who are watching all over Twitter or on YouTube, we appreciate it. Drop in the comments section if you're over on YouTube. What was your favorite Halloween outfit / moment? And we'll be sure to read it and talk about it, as well as cover some IDP Fantasy Football. But we got a few things to talk about, and by a few things, I mean like two, so let's get right to them. All right, JT, we got some news and notes here for people. Totally, not a comprehensive list of everything that's going on in the world of the NFL, but things that definitely jump out in terms of how things went last week and what we're anticipating things going this coming week. JT, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so a big one for IDP players, Fiaze Alakun. I always mess up his name. He just is the one I can never get correct. He's back for the Jags. Big time for most people because you probably spend a ton of money on him, have a lot invested. So he is back for the Jags. He played last week, went right back to his number one role. That obviously hurt some of the other linebackers as Devin Lloyd and Ventrell Miller split a lot of time. And Chad Muma, my guy, my crush, is out. Chad Muma, no playing time for Chad Muma. He's back to the bench. Me just dreaming that he gets traded to someone else one day so I can see a lot more of Chad Muma. So there's that. Also, the Chiefs made a trade. They acquired Josh Uche from the New England Patriots to add to their pass rushing unit. So they've added him there as well. And then the big trade kind of going around, Ernest Jones was traded for the second time in one season. The Titans shipped him off to the Seahawks for a 4th-round pick and got Jerome Baker. So Jerome Baker headed to Tennessee. Ernest Jones, after starting the year on the Rams, which he was in a lot of people's top 5 or top 10 linebackers, is now in Seattle. So those are kind of the big moves. We'll talk about a couple other things as we go throughout the show, but those are kind of the big things that kind of stood out heading into this week.
Very cool. And of course, if you all have any start sit questions for IDP, throw them in the chat. If you have questions on offense, JT will answer them in the chat like we do always here on Shoot the Gap. We don't want to turn you all away from getting, very pivotal and important fantasy football information here. For expediency's sake, we're going to skip Money and Mirage today. Let's just get into some of our plays and fades for the week. So, JT, I want to go over a couple things here. I think for our plays and fades last week, we did pretty well. We hit on a lot of players and a lot of players that we're not, telling people not to play. So I think, we can hang our hat on that. We had Ivan Pace go off for close to 15 fantasy points with, Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Patrick Queen was like the LB60. We told you to fade him. Jelani Tavai, we told you to fade him. I'll tell you the one that hurts. And it's one of your guys. And I was really on board with this until I saw the end of the game. And that's Beanie Bishop. This guy, the second he had that interception I think it was towards the end of the game, I'm just like, jack squat the entire game, and then all of a sudden, there you go. He had to make himself somewhat fantasy relevant. I'm just like, damn it.
Yep, exactly.
Aziz Al-Shair also had a good game, got 2 sacks against Russell Wilson. So, we gave you some pretty awesome IDP advice, and so we definitely are going to hang our hats onto that. But, this week is a new week, and let's give these people some new players that they should be targeting and inserting in their lineups, especially as we are in bye week season. Who do you got for us, JT?
Yeah, so to start for me on the D line, it's been a little bit of a mess just because of the rotations there for the Indianapolis Colts. But a really nice game last week for Dio Adebayo. Just number one D lineman in Fantasy Pro scoring, and he almost had a monster game. He had 24.8 points in Fantasy Pro scoring for the number one D lineman. But if anybody saw that game, he had a fumble picked up that he ran back 80 yards for a touchdown that got called back. They ended up saying that he got touched as he was falling to the ground, and that counted. He never got touched when he hit the ground, but they were claiming as he was pulling the fumble away in the air. So I'll give you an example. I was playing for people who didn't see it. They're trying to pitch the ball to Joe Mixon. He kind of almost stole the ball out of the air and kind of ripped it away from Joe Mixon and fell to the ground. They eventually said that Mixon kind of forced him to the ground and called him down. If not, it would have been an 80-yard return for a touchdown, which would have won the game for the Colts. They ended up losing 23-20, but that would have put them up 27-23. Would have been huge. Even without that, he was the number one DN of the week. Really nice game. He has really been picking it up lately as he had 3 solo tackles, 4 total, had a sack, had that fumble recovery. Like I said, the 80-yard return would have been monstrous. He's up to playing about 67% of snaps, which, you know, if you're looking at the Colts snap share, that's pretty good. He led the team in snap share there because they've been rotating those guys a little bit at the DN. He had a nice 16% win rate and pressure rate as well. And now he gets a game Sunday night against the Vikings. This is a guy, I don't know for how many people remember, was kind of a sleeper, but a stud coming out of Vanderbilt and tore his Achilles pre-draft and ended up dropping down to the second round. He was a guy that most people had as a mid-first round or late first round pick. The Colts, a little bit surprisingly, went up and got him in the second as opposed to kind of waiting any longer on him. Knew it was going to be a while before him to develop, but he's starting to show you what that original first round talent that people thought he was coming out of Vanderbilt. I'm really liking what I've seen out of him. I think, you know, obviously going to be hard to have that D lineman week 1 again, but banged up offensive line for the Vikings. I think he's going to get a shot to make some noise. He's a guy I really like and a guy I think you should keep an eye on. And just, you know, he's not the big name there for the Colts, so I think a lot of people forget about him, but he's a guy that is playing very well right now in Indy.
No, love that 100%. Just to go over here, a player that has been playing kind of, you know, hit or miss when it comes to, you know, he has his on weeks, he has his off weeks. His partner here, Arden Key, that may be a little tease as to who I'm going to be talking about, went off for the Tennessee Titans. 3 solos, 3 assisted, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He, for Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, he got you 23.8 fantasy points. He just went off last week for Fantasy Football. This week, I'm going to say that it's going to be his partner on the other side, Harold Landry. Like I said, very streaky when it comes to his performances. But when you go back and you look at like who he's been going against, you know, he really does take advantage of his matchups here. So what really stands out to me is that he's going to be lining up against DeMontre Jacobs of the Patriots, and he has allowed 11 pressures so far this season. Or at least the past 3 weeks, let alone the entire season, and has given up 3 sacks. And so Landry definitely has a good matchup here versus an offensive lineman that, you know, is kind of almost like inviting him to the quarterback. It's like, this way, come right this way. You like to get the quarterback? Would you like to get a couple sacks? Here you go, Mr. Landry. All there. On the flip side, you know, I'm going to go against the guy that I was kind of high on last week, despite the fact that he was playing and is playing really, really well in relief of Kayvon Thibodeau, and that is Azeez Al-Shaair. He's not facing Broderick Jones this week. This week he's going against the Commanders tackles, which, believe it or not, have been playing pretty well. It also helps.
They've been solid.
And of course, what you know, let's face it here. What helps an offensive line look good? A mobile quarterback who kind of gets out of the pocket and kind of evades pressure. And oh my God, the Commanders have that. And I think you're going to find that that combination of pass blocking along with Jaden Daniels' mobility is going to get in the way of Alshire having a big game. Pressures are still going to be there. I think obviously the pressures will be there. Now, whether the pressures are converted into sacks, I don't think they are going to be this week. One extra person, you know what? I'm going to save
And
him.
we don't usually talk about this because we usually play just straight IDP. But since you brought it up,
sure.
If you're in a defensive start league, like if you're in a regular like yearly league there, you just play a defense special teams, the Commanders are my pickup this week. I've been picking them up everywhere. I really like to play their defense against the Giants offense this week. So if you're in a tight spot like me I've got the Steelers in a ton of leagues and they're on bye week. If you're looking for someone, I've picked up the Washington defense in quite a few leagues.
There you go. I was going to talk about another player for New England, but I'm going to tell you why he is an awesome cheat code when we get to linebackers. So, JT, tell me about your who did you talk about again? You talked about
so my play this week is the Adebayo for the Colts at defensive end. Like I say, he's getting a really nice, pretty about 68 to 70% snap share. I think he's really kind of coming into his own. He's had a couple down weeks throughout the year, but I just think he's starting to really turn it up. So he's my play. My fade on the D line this week is a big name, but at this point, we just can't count on him. And that's Joey Bosa of the Chargers going against the Browns this week. He just continues to be banged up week after week after week. He's one of those guys you look at him and there's a Q next to his name. He's questionable, but you see the big name. You're like, oh, should I play him? Should I play him? At this point, this is not even a this week thing. And that's why I wanted to bring it up to everybody. I think he's a sit for the foreseeable future unless something else changes. And the big reason for that for me is he just can't stay healthy. He missed the last 3 games, came back this week, only played 20 snaps before it looked like he hurt his hamstring again and went out. In the 4 games he's played this year, he only has 9 tackles and 2 sacks. So he's got the 2 sacks in 4 games, which is nice. But at this point, every game he plays, he's like a ticking time bomb. You just don't know, is it going to get 3 snaps? Is he going to get 20 snaps? Is he going to play a full game? It's like every game you're holding your breath like, how many snaps am I going to get before he gets hurt this game or goes out? So for me, he is just a fade right now in general. I know it's hard to sit that Joey Bosa name. He's a guy that when he's healthy, he's an absolute stud. But we're not getting old Joey Bosa anymore. This is the old creaky, beat up Joey Bosa, and he is not helping anybody in IDP right now.
Nope, 100% agree. I had my window a couple of years ago to trade him away when the injuries started piling up. Now I can't even give him away in one of my dynasty leagues.
Yep.
But at the same time, I'm paranoid, right? Because I'm like, do we just straight drop him at this point if I'm playing dynasty or if I'm, you know what I mean?
It's tough.
It's easier to let go in a redraft
Yeah.
league, but for a dynasty league, it's like you know what he can do when he's healthy, right?
Mm-hmm. And this Chargers defense is improving, right? So I was like, they played well as a unit this year after all the injuries last year. It's like you've seen, with Khalil Mack and those guys on the other side, which he was my sack lunch guy last week. He got a sack. Boom. Love it. They can bring pressure. So it's like if he's healthy, you're like I said, he's in 4 games and he hasn't even played full 4 games. He's got 2 sacks. So again, he can still get to the quarterback. It's just you just can't count on him. And nothing to me is more frustrating in fantasy than when guys leave early because of injury all the time and get you a big fat 0. It drives me nuts.
No, that makes a lot of sense there. For the linebacker position, for going into our plays and fades for that, this is where it gets kind of interesting. All offseason, a lot of us have been talking about Jelani Tavai is going to get his opportunity in New England, and it just hasn't been there, the productivity. It's like it's been average, and there's some above average games, but for the most part, we're talking about like 9 fantasy points, 6 tackles. It just hasn't been looking great. Well, there's a new kid on the block. And no, I'm not going to be playing the music from New Kid on the Block because I would like to not get copyright infringement labeled on this video. Christian Ellis. You look at the total defensive snap share, 83.9% compared to Tavai's 79%. Tackle efficiency, 15.4% compared to Tavai's 10.2%. Total tackles for PFF, and all these metrics are provided by PFF, so I don't want to let anybody think that I'm just coming up with these numbers off the top of my head. 8 tackles to 5 tackles. It's pretty obvious that Christian Ellis is the guy that is actually producing at the linebacker position for the New England Patriots. Now, here's the thing about Christian Ellis. On Sleeper, I can't speak to the other platforms because I haven't researched them yet, but I do know on Sleeper, he is dual eligible defensive lineman, linebacker. So now, normally for defensive linemen, the saving grace for them is, if you're lucky to have one of the elite ones, is having a high tackle floor plus the pressure bonus of getting sacks and quarterback hits. But for the most part, for your defensive lineman, you're really counting on sacks, really to help bolster your fantasy performance. Now you have a guy who's a linebacker who racks up tons of tackles, has a great tackle efficiency, doesn't need sacks to make your team fantasy relevant. And now he's being put in a position where he could be asked to rush the passer, as well as have that high tackle for, that super high tackle for. This guy is what we call in IDP Fantasy Football a cheat code. Got Jerry Bagshaw in the chat. Great insight, guys. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for tuning in. Any thoughts on Christian Ellis here, JT?
Yeah, I actually today was going through a bunch of my IDP leagues looking for him, seeing if he was happened to be out there on the waiver wire, because I definitely wanted to pick him up. Jelani Tavai is a guy I own a lot of, just because I got him last year when I was hurting at linebacker. I thought, hey, man, he's got, he doesn't have a real high ceiling, but he's got a decent floor. He was on my fades last week in our Plays and Fades article. He just is, like you said, he's just been as basic as you can get. You're getting a couple tackles out of him, but he's not getting anything crazy. And he's starting to lose snap share. Ellis is a guy I like. He's really come on the last 2 to 3 weeks. He's starting to play really well. I think this defense is starting to pick it up a little bit for New England as they're kind of getting it together. And he's definitely been the guy on defense to own. So if you go through and you look at New England's defense, he's the only guy that's been up in that double digits scoring range the last 2 weeks. So there's been a bunch of guys have had decent games here and there, and then they drop off, kind of those types of things. But I think Christian Ellis is a nice pickup. If you can go out and find him in one of your leagues, I searched everywhere for him. He was pretty much already snagged up in most of my leagues, which I'm not surprised about, because in most of the IDP leagues I play in, I'm playing with pretty knowledgeable IDP people, so they know who to go after and grab guys when they have big weeks. But I think that's definitely a guy to look out for. And if you can get him in your lineup, he's definitely worth a look.
I literally, as you're talking about him, I went to my phone and I'm like, oh crap, I haven't checked if he's available yet. And like everywhere on my phone, I just went and started adding him in my IDP Dynasty League of Record. Still available, which I don't know how that.
Nice, because I was looking for him today hard to see if I could find him. I know we're going to talk about him in my linebacker play for this week. I went to grab him, and you already got him in the Fantasy and Frames League. I was pissed. You picked him up earlier than me. I was like, freaking Jorge beat me to him. I was like, right when I went to go to the league page to look him up, I saw transactions, and I saw that you had already picked him up. I was like, dang it. So nice work by you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's get into your play then. Let's not tease the audience.
Well, before we do that, we got a question again here from Jerry. He says, for consistency, would you rather play have Ellis or Quentin Lake, the Rams DB? I'll go first on this one. I have been playing Quentin Lake all year. I really like Quentin Lake. He's been very, very solid, but you got to start looking at, he is changing positions. I talked about this, I think it was last week's show or the week before. He started as kind of the slot safety or slot corner there for them. He is rotated back to the deep safety role for the Rams. And so the tackles that he was getting earlier in the year, he had a couple games where he was mostly playing deep safety, and he still was able to get a pretty good tackle share. To me, I'm getting nervous. I still have him in a lot of leagues, but if I have someone else to play besides him, I'm starting to lean towards playing the other guy, just because Lake has really turned into that deep safety role for the Rams. I would lean playing Ellis. Just what he's done the last couple of weeks and where Lake's gone, the production hasn't been bad for Lake. So it's not like I'm saying don't play him, But if it was between these two guys, I'm playing Ellis over Lake at this point in the season.
Yeah. So let me pull up something really quick here.
Because I know he was like playing at least 50% of the box safety roles, and then it was like 75 or 80 plus the last couple of weeks where Lake had slid back, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's so yeah. So let me pull it up right now. So last week with Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake, there's a box safety percentage. Quentin Lake had 26%, Cameron Curl had 21.6%. Why now in previous weeks you had started to see Cameron Curl's box snap percentage kind of stay where it's at, which is what you want. And you've been seeing Quentin Lake move more into a deep safety role, so away from the ball. And now you're banking on more pass deflections and interceptions, these impact plays to really salvage your fantasy, performance. Now, the only reason why, Quentin Lake had the higher total defensive snap share last week is because Cameron Curl left the game due to injury, or at least he left the game for a brief stint during the game, giving Lake more of an opportunity. It's tough. I think I'm going to go the other way. I think I would go with Lake just because, like you said it, Jerry, for consistency, you know what you're getting from Quentin Lake. Christian Ellis is a cheat code that you can insert into your linebacker, or at least presumably is a cheat code. We need to see that more on a more consistent basis. So I think it's if you have roster space, rostering Christian Ellis and seeing what happens this week is a good plan. But yeah, I think I would roll with Quentin Lake in this situation.
Quentin Lake probably has a little bit of the safer floor, don't you think? Just from there, but Ellis has, I think, more of the impact play. So it kind of depends on your league scoring too. So if it's something where you need something else, but the one nice thing about Ellis is he has taken over the lead share of snaps at linebacker for the Patriots, 84% last week, but you'd still like to see that up even a little higher for a linebacker.
So let me go to my linebacker fade for the week. This is confusing to me, the situation going on in Green Bay. Quay Walker wasn't able to clear the concussion protocol heading into week 8, and we saw Eric Wilson play 100% of the total snaps. And we would think that Edgerrin Cooper, who had been emerging as the locked-in LB2 for the team, had a great tackle efficiency, over 20%. That's super elite. Only played 59.6% of snaps, and it was Isaiah McDuffie climbing back into the defensive good graces of the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, who played 66% of the total defensive snaps. So it is very odd. You're seeing McDuffie playing more snaps on first and second down and less on third down, and quite the opposite. On first and second down, you're seeing Cooper playing at 55%, and then on third and fourth down at 80%. So I just from looking at that, my immediate thought is like, oh, they're putting Cooper more in coverage situations, not in run stopping situations in the early downs. So that is concerning. Up until this week, I was very comfortable with Edgerrin Cooper just because of the opportunity. But this latest situation makes me not so sure. So I'm kind of fading him this week.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from on that. I actually like Edgerrin Cooper. I know the stats, like just looking at what they did last week, he did bear that out, but it's like, man, he looks so much better than McDuffie. When you're like watching the game, you're like, oh man, he's making plays. You're starting to see, why he was the number one linebacker, taking the fact that he was able to get a sack, got a forced fumble, because that's what he gets you, right? Edgerrin Cooper's not just a tackle linebacker. He's a guy that can rush the passer, can make impact plays. It's tough because I really want to push people on Edgerrin Cooper going forward. The numbers right now don't say it. Just on the snap share percentage, but man, what he's doing with the snaps he's getting are fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about how his snaps have gone down with decreased snaps. However, I will play devil's advocate in saying, look, his tackle efficiency was well into the 20%. So again, on limited snaps, he did play well. He was, the LB.
He was the number 6 in Fantasy Pro scoring. 20.3 points was number 6 in Fantasy Pro scoring, despite playing less than 60% of snaps.
See, that to me screams fluke. That to me screams like, look, if your efficiency is not there and you're not playing on the field all the time, like you may get lucky and have a big week there. But that doesn't sound like someone to me that's sustainable, given the fact that you're seeing the increase in snaps from McDuffie. Now, if the snap percentage was to go higher this week, then down the road, I think you're looking at a good situation. But I think we skipped Money or Mirage. And this would have been a great Money or Mirage question. So based off of last week and lack of snap percentage, is he a Money or Mirage? I think his performance last week, that high level performance in Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, I think that's a Mirage. For now,
you're and we usually agree on all that stuff, but I'm going to go the opposite. I actually think he's money. I think they're going to go back, watch the tape. I think the coaches are going to be like, man, he just brings us so much more, and they're going to figure out ways to get him, because I know the young guys make mistakes. So you go out there and you're like, hey, let me get the veteran in, make sure he's making the plays. I think they're going to work him in a lot more. I really do. The numbers don't say it right this second. I think they're going to go up. I really do. I think the coaching staff is going to see the impact plays he makes and the things he's doing. And McDuffie's just such a nah. That's who he is. He's just like, he's an okay guy. But I just think they're going to see Cooper. So I'm actually going to go the opposite. He's money for me. We're doing the Money Mirage segment late. He's money for me. I actually think that he's a guy I want to get on now if you can, because some people are going to look at that snap share and be like, oh, he's not playing that much. But, man, I think it's going to go up. And if Quay Walker continues to he's got the concussion, if he has issues or problems going forward, I think they're going to lean heavier on Cooper here.
So there you go, folks. We need a third person here to split the decision here. So I think it's safe to say, though, you're rostering Edgerrin Cooper. The question is, is the consistency going to be there from week to week going forward? We shall see. JT, let's get into your plays and fades at linebacker.
So at linebacker here for me this week, and I'm another guy, I'm going to butcher his name, and I apologize. Mohamed Diabate, is that how you say his name? Diabate for the Cleveland Browns versus the Chargers. He's a guy, I have to be honest, didn't know anything about him. Had to get back into him, look him up at this week, but some things going on there in Cleveland. A ton of injuries at linebacker, a neck injury for JOK. So it's really pushed him in to playing time. So JOK had 20.5 fantasy points before he went out with a neck injury. Jordan Hicks is banged up. He's questionable whether he's going to play this week. In instead, Diabate had 86.8% of snaps last week. He turned those snaps into 8 tackles and a pass defense. If you're going to go against a run first Chargers offense, and keep an eye on the injury report to make sure those guys are out. But if both those guys are out, man, I think he's an absolute slam play this week. Somebody's going to have to make tackles against that Chargers run game. And he showed last week with the snap percentage that he can make plays. He's a pickup. He's definitely a waiver wire guy for most people. He's out there. I went and grabbed him in a couple leagues. And if these guys are out with injury, I'm plugging him into my starting lineup.
Nice. And who's your fade for the week?
My fade for a week is this one's going to be a little bit of a strange fade because he's been scoring well. So you're going to look at me and be like, huh, you're fading this guy? But I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. Now, play him if you don't have anybody else. If you got buys, you got injuries, you got to do it, play him. But that's Terrell Dotson from the linebacker for the Seahawks. They're going against the Rams this week. So currently, if you look at him right now, he's got an overall average in Fantasy Pro scoring. He's linebacker number 17 overall. So, solid starting linebacker. But week to week, he hasn't been super impressive. He's just kind of been on the field as opposed to other guys getting injuries. So overall, week to week, if you look at his scoring average, he's actually tied with 3 other guys for linebacker 23 at 12.3 points per game. So not terrible. So don't get me wrong. I'm not like Johnson's awful. What is this guy talking about? But a lot of that production came in the first 6 weeks. The last 2 weeks has definitely slowed in that production. He has not been great the last 2 weeks. And now they trade for Ernest Jones. I think Ernest Jones becomes a linebacker 1 here for the Seahawks. I think that's why they made the move. They traded Jones, who's more of a run stopper, for Jerome Baker, who was more of a pass guy. He was more a pass coverage guy. He didn't really get in there and mix it up a lot. So for me, I'm worried about Dotson. Now, if you don't have anybody else, play him, but this is more like the Bosa thing for me. Start keeping an eye on his production week to week. I think Ernest Jones starts stealing a lot of his thunder and a lot of his point production. So I'm worried about Dotson moving for as like a clear cut stamp it, start him every week guy. I'm not sure he's going to be that moving forward this season.
Nice. Let me give you my fade here. And it's Grant Delpit. And it's really interesting the differences between efficiency and productivity. You know, like you obviously want your stars to align in this situation. It's kind of boggling my mind because I believe last season and the season before he was always a consistent top 36 defensive back, and that just hasn't been the case. Definitely was not the case over the past 3 weeks. Over the last week in week 8, he was in the box 37.9% of the time. I want to say his stats last week were 8 tackles with 4 solo, 4 assists for 9 fantasy points. 9 fantasy points for using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Brought you down to the DB 60s. Excuse me. So I'm not saying he's a bad play. If you're desperate for a play there, but I feel like at the DB 60 you can do better than just having a bunch of players that are averaging 9 points a game and go for somebody a little bit higher. For example, somebody that I am high on this week is Trayvon Moehrig. How did this guy slip through the cracks? You look back to the past few weeks, 9 tackles, 6 tackles with a pass deflection, 9 tackles with a pass deflection and an interception, 5 tackles, an interception, pass deflection. Like, this guy's making more plays. He's getting more fantasy points using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring since week 4. He's gotten you double-digit fantasy points last week. Finished as a defensive back, 25, mind you, but had 17 fantasy points, which is ridiculous that you're getting that much productivity from essentially a low-end DB2 to a high DB3. So I'm definitely saying Trayvon Moehrig has been picking it up as of late, and is somebody that I would say you should start this week.
Delpit was before we get into the question, Delpit was a guy who was actually on my plays last week, and part of the reason he was on my plays last week was I was worried about the linebacker core for the Browns and going against the Ravens. I said he's a good play because I thought he was a nice floor play and that he would get tackles. He did. 4 solo, 4 assists for 8 total tackles, no impact plays, nice floor play. But again, that was last week. I think that was kind of a one-off. I liked him because of the Ravens matchup. Right. Not so much moving forward. Like you said, he just hasn't. He's just been okay. I liked him as kind of a sneaky play just last week, and he did get you to 8 total tackles. I wish there was a couple more solo in there. Right. But I agree with you that he just hasn't been. He hasn't been huge. Let's get into the question before I jump into my play and fade at DB.
Okay, Jerry. First of all, Jerry, thanks for tuning in, man. We really appreciate you joining us here on Shoot the Gap. So close to Thursday football kickoff. He says, pick one rest of season. Azeez Ojulari or Blake Cashman coming off of injury. So here's the problem with Ojulari. And I love him as a player. I think he's super productive when he's healthy. The question is, he's there playing right now because Kayvon Thibodeau is not healthy. And when Kayvon Thibodeau comes back to full strength, he's gonna resume, edge rusher 1 snap percentages. In which case, you're going to see Ojulari's go down. Then you get into a sticky situation where it's like, man, Ojulari is producing fantasy points, but he's only playing 40% of snaps, and it's kind of like, well, what are you banking on? That every week in limited fashion he's just going to go off, or are you banking on the fact that he's playing a limited amount of snaps and there's potential that more often than not, because he's playing a limited amount of snaps, he's not going to have enough opportunity to go off. And so it really depends on, one, your roster construction, two, your depth, three, the fantasy points that you get per play. And really, at this point of the season, we got to start looking at standings. We got to start looking at where you're at to make the final push, or start to make the push towards the playoffs in your league. Do you need a desperation play? If you're making a desperation play, I think you lean more to the side of Ojulari going off on limited snaps. But if you're looking for a safe play to kind of stabilize your roster, I would look away from Ojulari. Now, there have been reports that he may be a trade candidate before the trade deadline. If he was to go someplace that he would be their defensive lineman one, I think I would buy in. I trust the talent. What are your thoughts on the situation here, JT?
I agree with you. Everything you said there, I agree with you. I think Cashman's the better play long term. Obviously, if you're really hurting at the end until Thibodeau gets back, I think Ojulari is a play. But for me, I would probably lean Cashman for the year. Whenever he's come back, whenever he's played, he's gotten you points this year. He's just been really solid. I almost always lean to the linebacker that can get me a nice safe floor over the guy that I'm having to hope he gets me a sack, or I'm probably not getting anything from that week. And then actually jumping in here, thanks, Will. Will jumps in and says, hey, I just dropped Ojulari for Will McDonald tonight. I like McDonald. We've talked about him a bunch on this show. A little more hit and miss guy, like we said, with getting sacks or not, but he's been very productive, a former number one pick out of Iowa State. I like McDonald. I have a ton of McDonald, so I like that move. What do you think about that, Jorge?
I have a question. Did he have a farm? Just get it. Old McDonald had it. Okay, I'll stop. I'm so sorry. This is not 10 o'clock. This is not after hours. I'm saying corny dad jokes already.
Hey, maybe you got a little bit of that candy rush. It is Halloween night. I'm going to let you. I'm going to let you have it.
Thank you very much. I'm curious what's going to go on with Hassan Reddick. Is this going to be a game where he starts to amp up some of his productivity? It's 2 weeks. This will be his second week with the Jets. Is he up to speed yet? I'm going to bank no. I don't think you missed an entire offseason and majority or halfway through the NFL season, and then just step on the scene and it's like, I'm Hassan Reddick. I'm going to go crazy. Now I say this and watch he goes off for 7 tackles and 4 sacks and just utterly just derails what I'm talking about. But I would play McDonald over him. Yes. So to answer his second question, is Reddick a better play than McDonald though? Or are you like me and you have to see it? I'm like you. I have to see it. I
100% agree. I'm playing McDonald over Reddick tonight for sure.
Let's finish off with your defensive backs. And then we'll get to close out the show. So who do you got for your play and fade at defensive back here, JT?
Yep. So for me, my play this week is Budda Baker, Cardinals safety against the Bears. We're seeing the old Budda Baker finally coming back. Dealt with a lot of injuries and things over the years. He's, I think, by far the Cardinals' best defensive player. I don't think it's even close. He's really, really started to turn it up. He was a DB3 in Fantasy Pro scoring last week. He had 12 tackles, 6 of those solo in a pass defense. He has 4 top 10 finishes in Fantasy Pro scoring so far. Currently, he's the DB2 in scoring, which I think if you would ask people, they probably wouldn't guess that Budda was number 2 right now. He's got a 0.4 points on the season, averaging 13.6 per game. Now, the crazy thing about these stats for him, he has almost 0 impact plays this year. He does not have a pick. He doesn't have a sack. Doesn't have a forced fumble. Doesn't have a fumble recovery. He's a tackling machine. He's absolutely getting out there every week and making tackles and making plays. Now just think about what he's been scoring and doing that and throwing a pick, a forced fumble, or a sack somewhere in the mix. He's going to score you a ton of points. He seems like a name everyone should just be like, oh, yeah, Budda Baker, of course you're playing every week. But that has not been the case leading up to this season with the injuries and some of the other things with the Arizona defense. But Budda's back into DB1 territory. You got to play him every week. Just love what he's doing right now. And the fact, like I said, no impact plays. And he's still scoring what he's scoring. He's going to add. He's the good player not to have some of those plays. He's going to get some, and then his scoring is going to go through the roof.
And who is your fade for the week?
And my fade this week is Antonio Johnson, safety for the Jaguars. So Johnson was a guy I was kind of pushing at the beginning of the year. He was kind of sleeper. He was a lot of guys it was on waiver wires. If you needed a starting box safety, he was one of the guys I was telling people to go get, just because he was a name that was a little under the radar coming into his second year. Pretty sure out of Texas A&M is where he went. Got off to a pretty nice start to the season. Nothing crazy, but he was definitely a guy I was playing week to week in a lot of fantasy leagues, especially leagues where I had to start three safeties. He was a guy I was definitely putting in there. First 6 weeks of the season, nearly 100% of snaps, almost every week was playing 100%. Wasn't, like I said, wasn't putting up huge numbers, but was solid. He was scoring 9.3 points per game in fantasy pros through the first 6 games. These last 2 weeks, fallen off a cliff. He has dropped down to 32% and 16% snap share. 2 total tackles, 1 solo, 1 assist in the last 2 games. Darnell Savage has absolutely stolen this role from him. He is the starting box safety now for the Jags. So if you have Antonio Johnson, you're kind of wondering, oh, he just didn't have great production the last 2 weeks. What's going on? Maybe he got hurt. Nah, he has lost his starting job. I'm not saying just go out and straight drop him. If you're in a redraft league, you probably can. Dynasty, I'm not getting rid of him yet, but I also definitely went out there, the couple teams that I had him, and if I had a spot on my roster, I was picking up another safety just in case, because he has lost the role. If this turns into a full-time thing where he's just done here, then he's going to end up turning in from a starter to a droppable guy. It's just been a tough spot for him. I haven't read anything from the Jags media that said the coaching staff thought he was playing terrible, but obviously you see the snap share. They like what Savage is doing better. So for right now, Antonio Johnson, get him out of your lineups. Do not play him. He is getting no snaps.
There you go. And for more plays and fades for week 9, go to fantasyandframes.com tomorrow. Check out JT's IDP plays and fades for week 9 article. And then reach out to him if you have any questions. Reach out to me if you have any IDP questions. Whew, we did it. 8 o'clock on the dot. You all enjoy Thursday Night Football. Thank you very much for tuning in to Shoot the Gap. And we'll be back next week at our usual time, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the Fantasy and Frames networks. JT, you have a great rest of your weekend, man.
You as well. See ya.
See you, folks.